Welcome to The Balancing Act, the podcast for mastering work, wealth and well-being, with me, your author and host, Sarah Brennand. Here we explore conversations, insights and expert advice through the lens of what truly drives high performance and sustainable success, aligning your money and mission, strengthening your mental and physical health, and creating a more intentional work-life balance. Each week, I'm joined by leaders, professionals and specialists who share how they navigate their own balancing act, along with practical tools and strategies that you can apply in yours. In this episode, I'm joined by Sarah Willingham, entrepreneur, investor, and someone who has built, scaled, and exited multiple consumer businesses while staying very clear about what success actually looks like in real life. We explore how she defines success beyond business growth, the decisions that shaped her career and family life, and why freedom, time, and focus matter. It's an honest conversation about designing success across work, wealth, and our wider life. Well, welcome, Sarah. Thank you for joining me today. Can we start by talking about success? So what it means for you now, how you define it, measure it, explain it, and whether that's changed over the years.
So I think we always move our goalposts to a large extent, but for me, I've always very, very much been driven by freedom, not in a, if you said that word to a lot of people in the world, I can't do it justice because I fundamentally live in a free society. But for me, it's freedom within my life to be able to control my time. Actually, I think time is the single most important thing that we have, and it's when I feel unsuccessful is when I look at my diary and it's full and there are things that I've not been able to control within that. It's full of stuff that it's just kind of gone in, and I'm not managing my time well, that I start to feel very constrained within my own life. And it's that kind of lack of freedom. I think a real gift of a day is the ability to have nothing to achieve and to be able to sort of pootle through that day. And I've always felt like that. I now have 4 teenage children, but when I started to have kids, I was driven by the exact same thing, this need to be able to control my time and my diary, and to be able to wake up on a Tuesday and go, you know what? I actually just want to spend the day today with my babies, being a mom, or to be whatever that might be. But it's that ultimate freedom. And that to me is success.
So in terms of how you balance a desire to, as you explain it, to kind of just be able to not have to do anything, how do you balance that desire to not do anything with the
desire to do something?
Yes, yeah, because you've done so many things and built, businesses and support other people to do so. That feels quite a polar opposite to, that must take a lot of your time or energy, or you must have to do a lot of things.
I do have to do a lot of things. And you're absolutely right. And of course, the joy in a day is when you're doing less and thinking more. And, that's a great day. I think one of the best ways to describe it, I think, actually, is so years and years ago. God, when was it? It was in the 90s, actually. So I was in my 20s and I lived in Japan for a year. And when I opened a restaurant there, and when I left, the team gave me this drama doll, which is a little, shame I haven't got one here, actually. It's downstairs, but it's a little doll, and it's got 2 eyes on it. And when you're given this doll, this is an answer to your question, by the way, I promise. Just seems like I've gone off on a tangent, but I promise I haven't. When you're given this doll, you are wished fulfillment. In fact, you can actually use the doll for like a small goal that you have. It doesn't have to be this gigantic life goal. But when they gave it to me, it was about them wishing me fulfillment in my life. And when you get the doll, at some point, you're supposed to colour in the left eye. And at that point of you colouring in the left eye, you're supposed to envisage what does great look like what is fulfillment. And then when you get there, you colour in the right eye. And this is kind of the answer to the question. So it's a really great thing because it's a moment in time where you kind of put a stick in the ground, where you can't move the goalpost. Because at that moment, and I was what, 28?
Yeah.
And I coloured in my left eye, and I said, at what point am I going to say it's all now a bonus
Yeah.
in my life? And so I realised, and it took me a while to colour in my left eye actually, because it took me a while to realise what it was that great looked like, what was fulfillment. So when I coloured in my left eye, I had three things. One was, I really wanted to be a mom, and it was just so ingrained in me since I was a very small child. I just always wanted to be a mom. And yes, I wanted to have a big family. Really, if I was being honest with myself, four was like a huge bonus. I just wanted to
Yeah.
be a mom. The second thing is I really wanted to meet somebody that I wanted to share my life with. And the third thing was I wanted to see something that I'd started. So business, this is a thing that I did with my brain. I wanted to see something through full circle. So I wanted to start, grow, and exit. And the exit was important for two or three reasons. One is it's actually kind of a bit of a definition of success within our industry, within business. But also, it was the acknowledgement that I did really want to make a bit of cash
Yeah.
in order to have this kind of freedom with having children and to be able to make some choices in the future. So there were those three things. Anyway, at this point, I hadn't even met Michael. Like, I had got no plans to have children right in front of me. I hadn't met the person I wanted to have children with. I also hadn't started my own business.
Okay.
At this point. So I was quite some way off colouring in my right eye. But the reason I say that is because your question is right. Like if I go, it's very, what is success? Well, success is freedom. Well, okay. Then you have to unpick that. Well, hang on a minute. Like, how do you get freedom? And what about all the other stuff? What about the fact that, it's taken us way too long to get this in the diary? That means you're really busy, Sarah. What are you doing with your time? Quite right. All of those questions are 100% justified. And all of that is part of this. I love using my brain. I'm a solver. I'm a fixer. I like to get involved in, it happens to be business. That's what I enjoy doing. And I like fixing problems. It could be businesses. It could be charities. It could be social enterprise, but it could be politics. It's fixing stuff. Structurally, really, that I really enjoy doing. And I love all of that. But there is a point at which I wouldn't let it compromise fundamentally what drives me. And that's the thing, that this success is to make sure that is a balance. It is huge. Everything's a balance. Everything is a balance. Like being a mom, working, the whole thing is just staying fit. Everything's a big balance. And so, the reason I answered the question in that way was because as part of my kind of at that age, how did I define my own success, I guess? What did great look like? The work thing was a really big part of that.
Yeah. And you've obviously gone through those things. You are now with the person you want to spend your life with. You do have children. You have grown and created and exited a business.
Yeah.
So you've coloured in the other eye.
I have coloured in my other eye. Yep.
And then what happened? So at that point, so what ignited or influenced the next stage?
It's such a great question. Then what happens, right? And the beauty of doing it is that you do have to put a stick in the ground, because otherwise you constantly move the goalposts, constantly move them. So if I was to do it today, the world might look different, right? But what it has been is this really wonderful constant, almost for 20 years now, not quite, actually, probably more like 18 years. This constant really in the background of reminding myself, no, I coloured in my other eye.
Yeah.
Like I did it. This is a bonus. And something does shift inside of you when something shifted inside of me anyway, when I did colour in my right eye, because um, it gave me a lot of perspective after that of, well, I've coloured in my right eye. This is all a bonus now. And even by the time I actually got to having Marley, number 4, I was like, oh my God, am I asking too much of the universe? I said that great was one, right? I know I wanted lots of children, but I said that great was one. Am I asking too much of the universe? But luckily everything was fine, and he's amazing. So yeah, but it is a reminder. It is a constant balancer, I guess,
Yeah.
actually, of the reminder that, well, no, you coloured in your right eye. It's all a bonus. This is all
Yeah.
a bonus.
And have you put other targets in since that have kept you aligned with, because it sounds like that process very much gave you, the 3 things that you really wanted and that you were really driven to achieve. And then so everything else is a bonus now, but are you still as focused on what those things are that you are focused, that you are doing now? Or
Yes, probably less compromising,
yeah,
probably, actually, but yes, but still fundamentally, actually, I am driven by this time. But it's so interesting because it is all such a balance, like, and I am also a mom of 4, and I am also a very committed, dedicated, and happy wife. And in that means it's not all about me.
yeah,
So actually, there are many times in life where you, hey, Monts, number 3, number 2, actually, even. There are many times in life where you end up down a path, or you don't end up, you consciously make a decision to go down a path
yeah,
where you know that really fundamentally, if it was just about me, I probably wouldn't have gone down that path. But
yeah,
because it isn't, you are balancing and compromising the
yeah,
within the context of the world in which you live in, right? And I
yeah,
live as a mom of 4, I live as a daughter, I live as a friend, and as a really happy wife. But all of those things mean, like, if I would love to live in Australia, for example, but my parents aren't getting any younger. Would
yeah,
that be the right decision now? Probably not. I would have liked to have spent the last sort of 4 or 5 years in the south of France. My kids were like, what are you talking about? I took them out of school and we went traveling around the world for 3 years, and they were like, this is amazing. But the oldest one got to the point where she's like, I'd like to make friends and keep them. And
yeah,
even though they're half Danish, they identify as being English. So that's the decision then to come back to the UK. So would I have come back to the UK if I'd been on my own? No, probably not. So
yeah,
it
yeah,
is all, you always think but life is about balance. And I
yeah,
think the most important thing, I think, in making those decisions is understanding in your kind of core, the bit that you can't really mess with,
yeah,
what are the things you can't mess with? And those are the non-negotiables. Those are the things where I'm like, you can't fight nature. And if you try to fight who somebody fundamentally is and the things that are the most important to them, it's going to go wrong. So therefore, there are certain things that you
yeah,
just will not compromise, and you can't compromise, because actually, if I compromise too much, the whole thing falls apart. Does that
yeah,
make sense?
yeah, it does.
So
Yeah, it does.
yeah, and I think that's the constant balancing of, between selfish and selfless. And I say both of them as the positive versions of both of them, because I do
Yeah,
think selfishness is something that should be something that can be very, very positive and
yeah,
actually critical to somebody's happiness, actually. And again, selfless is part of existing within this kind of ecosystem that you have created, and therefore you've got to make it. You've got
yeah. So how do you, or what are the things that you do to maintain that balance of being you businesswoman, you wife, you parent, you friend? How do you, is that a purposeful trade-off? Is it a,
do you look back and think, "Oh, I needed to do something different, therefore I will, I don't know, make change in the future." Is it something that's on your mind daily, or is it more intuitive?
So it's really intuitive, and I feel it. I feel when I'm out
Yeah.
of balance. And actually I have done for a long time, felt it. But there was a time when sounds crazy to say it, but I actually had to diarize it, like to force, no, now I am me, now I am a mom, now I am working. I actually had to, because what I learned the hard way, as I'm sure a lot of parents will be able to, this will resonate with a lot of people, is I tried to do the lot and it just didn't work. I was too compromised everywhere, and I actually ended up doing everything badly. So, or shall I say, not doing anything well rather than everything badly. Yeah, not succeeding in anything brilliantly, not really enjoying any part, any kind of bucket of life. So I then realized I needed to force almost the segmentation. So going right now, I am at home, I am a mom, and I'm going to really be present and enjoy this.
Yeah.
And I diarized that for so long. That it was like a constant recalibration of
Yeah.
the balance, that now it's really intuitive. Now
Yeah.
I've not had a PA for years and years and years, and the reason is because nobody is able to put stuff in my diary as well
Mhm.
as I can, because nobody really knows. I need to listen to myself. I need to listen to my inner workings to
Yeah.
be able to say, actually, this is what I need to do more of this week.
And does that also link into your, because you kind of, you said earlier on about a desire to kind of control and have control over your time. So I guess if no one can put things in your diary, that would be akin to actually
Exactly.
you having full control of it.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, that's exactly right. It's by having control, I allow a level of fluidity. There are
Yeah.
certain things that, that obviously there are things that go in the diary, but I work around
Yeah.
how I'm thinking, looking at it, and I'm thinking, if I need to go to the gym 4 or 5 times in a week and I only train in the mornings, and I can see ahead, let's say I'm away at the weekend, which means I won't be able to go to the gym next weekend, I will then think, wow, okay, I need Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I have
Yeah.
got to go to the gym every morning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, in my mind. So it means I need to, as I put things into the diary, I can go,
Yeah.
right, I need to make sure that, if my first meeting starts at 9, let's say,
Yeah.
it has to be online and I have to be able to do it from home in Brighton. If it's in
Mm.
London, it needs to be an 11 o'clock start if I'm going to be able to go to the gym in Brighton on the way to work. And at the same time, if I know I'm away at the weekend and therefore I'm not with the family, I want to make sure that my diary has a lot more time at home that week, where,
Mhm.
like today, for example, I'm at home and, I've got lots of meetings, I'm doing lots of things, but I'm sat here at my desk, and, we will sit down and have dinner later, and I've kind of Monty's just walked in and kids are off on half term. So I see them and I'm around. Earlier I sat and went to the gym, but then I sat and had breakfast with Marley in between my 9 till 10 and my 10:30 till 11:30. I had half an hour, went downstairs, saw them. So
Yeah.
it is, nobody can really do that as well as you can. I don't.
Yeah. And you mentioned the gym there, and about you knowing that if you can't go, you need to put more sessions in. So how important, or how does the physical activity, physical health, mental health, well-being, how kind of on your radar is that? And how do how much do you need to do for you to feel well, or for you to know that that's the right balance?
I mean, I think it's critical. I actually think it's critical to anybody. I don't know. I don't know how anybody does it if they don't prioritize their um physical and mental well-being, actually. And I don't think it's easy to do. And I think one of the challenges is
Yeah.
that a lot of people actually don't know what suits them, and how to do it. So I'm a very physical person, so I move a lot. I
Mhm.
walk everywhere. I just move. And I can't really sit still for a particularly long period of time. So it is a constant.
Yeah.
I'm naturally a mover, and I build muscle very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just probably full of testosterone. Um, which I guess at my age is a great thing. Probably, I don't know how good it was when I was 30, but it's a great thing now at my age. So to go to the gym and lift weights is really important to me, but also to
Yeah.
walk everywhere is really important. Like I, it's quite very windy, but a nice day today outside. And so far I've walked to the gym, been to the gym, walked back from the gym, but I've been sat at my
Mhm.
desk. So
Yeah.
I will, when I get the next half an hour break, I will just go and walk, and because I
Yeah.
just need to move. And that's really important to me, to move. So that's kind of the physical thing. The mental well-being is actually very much linked to that, and that is I am a walker,
Yeah.
and I have learned over the years that I am my best self when I have the ability to empty my head, and I'm constantly trying to empty my head. I'm terrible at a pub quiz, by the way. Never asked me to be on a team. I literally can't retain anything. It's hilarious, but it's actually quite a serious thing to try properly trying to empty my head all the time. So I go on very long walks, and I don't put anything in my ears, so there's no podcast, nothing,
Yeah.
no further input. It's like constant input in my life anyway. And the walking for me is so critical because it is during that time that I will empty my head. And even if it's like, even if I'm in London, I'm going from one meeting to the other, I will try and arrange them so I have to walk, because I'm kind of almost emptying from one thing
So
to the next thing. And sometimes I'm not able to do it in the week. And
yeah.
I'll get to the weekend and I will just hike and hike. And if it gets really critical and I'm like, my head is just not good, it's busy. It's when my head's
Yes.
busy. And that's what I mean by not good. I'm very lucky. I don't suffer really from anxiety or depression or
Yeah.
anything like that. It's the busyness in my head, and then I don't think straight. If it gets critical, I will actually go away for the weekend and just hike, in
Yeah.
silence.
And
It's
how do you know
brilliant.
when it's getting critical? What are the bits that go like, do you feel it? Is it you said about not thinking straight? Is it how do you know when you're reaching that kind of tipping point to go, I just need to go in?
I know because I'm not present in any moment of my life,
Okay.
just not present. I am not noticing the leaves move, the wind in my face, I'm just not moving. I'm not noticing anything. I can have a conversation. I can go downstairs and have a conversation in the kitchen with the kids, come back up again and think, what did we just talk about?
Yeah.
That's when I'm too busy and I'm like, what the hell? Life is such a gift. And if
Yeah.
I'm missing now, this is really problematic. And sometimes it can be really small and I can just, go out for a long walk and
Yeah.
resaid to myself. Other times it's gone too far, and it's always adrenaline. It's
Yeah.
always adrenaline. And when I've got too much adrenaline in my system, I'm like, oh my God. And it can get so bad that like it almost makes me nauseous. I've got so much
Wow.
adrenaline in my system, and that's like, right, I'm booking a weekend into the mountains and I'm just going to go and hike.
And you go and do that on your own.
Either on my own or with a very introverted friend, which is perfect.
Yeah. Just don't talk to each other.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Um, so one thing I'm interested in as well. So you said about, that the first time you coloured in a left eye and you kind of set the goals, and one of them was to start, grow, and exit a business.
Yeah.
And I know from kind of some of the work I do with businesses that the concept of an exit strategy isn't actually that common or isn't as well defined as we might kind of think it is. So and you also mentioned about wanting to kind of have money. How did you, what were there ways, or were there people that you needed in your kind of inner circle in order to help you do that, and how did you go about working out who you needed? You hadn't started the business there yet, you knew you wanted
Yeah.
to start something, grow it, scale it, exit. If for somebody that is wanting to do a similar thing, what's your advice in terms of who do you need around you that's going to give you the inspiration or the advice in order to grow it, but then also do it in a way that means financially you can
Yeah.
exit it in the way you want to?
It's a really, really good question. And I think you have to start off when you start a business by knowing what great looks like. And that sounds so obvious, but I think so few people ask that question. What does great look like? And now I wanted to have the largest chain of Indian restaurants in the UK. That was like my thing.
Yeah.
And at the time I was at Pizza Express. That's what great looked like. So
Yeah.
I knew what great looked like. We had floated the business, bought back all of the franchises, got a really simple, replicable business model, great return on investment. It was a floated business, but we also used debt in the capex. And I was in my mid-20s, and I'd run the international department of Pizza Express, and then I moved into working directly for the board on sort of special projects and stuff, like they put the pizzas into the supermarkets, did some acquisitions of businesses in Soho and other businesses. And so that was an amazing framework for me to learn from. And I was very lucky because working for the board meant that I actually shared an office with the chief executive, a guy called David Page, who is, I mean, kind of the godfather of the simple replicable business model in the UK. Brilliant at it. Pizza Express, then did Frank Manca, and has recently bought into Tasty PLC. So in sharing an office with him, I was able to say for nearly a year, okay, what is he doing here? What is it that makes Pizza Express successful? And to really lift the lid and to get underneath it. And at the end of it, I was like, I totally get what you do. And it's not just, I get what you do in a site, one restaurant, what has made that successful. It was much more about understanding. I understand how you are creating underlying value in this business that is beneficial to shareholders and stakeholders. And that's how you end up being in a position to be able to create an exit. Those learnings were really critical, because I think if I'd not learned that, I certainly would have had to learn that somewhere.
Yeah.
So that was important. Then there were bits that I was weaker on. So even though I'd done some acquisitions for Pizza Express, my legal framework was weaker than, for example, my operational framework. So it was understanding, right, if you're going to go and do this yourself. And to be honest, I was really happy at Pizza Express. I loved it. But I knew that if I wanted to have a family and I wanted to be
Mhm.
able to control my diary, I knew I had to go and do it myself. It was going to be the only way. I knew I couldn't do it working for somebody else. So I had to make that decision. So surrounding yourself with brilliant people is, without a doubt, I mean, it's the best piece of advice I've ever been given in my life.
Mhm.
Actually, by a guy who's still in my phone as Yoda. So
Brilliant.
and I still know him really, really well. 25 years ago when he said that to me. But your brilliant people is different than my brilliant people.
Mhm.
And I'm constantly saying to people, even in my team or people that I met, people that I meet, you don't need to know the answer, but you do need to have a phone a friend. You do need to know where you can get the answer. You at least need to know the question to ask. You at least
Yeah.
need to know that there is a question to ask in the first place. And that comes from exposure and, experience, and you surrounding yourself, putting yourself
Yeah.
into positions and learning. And in my case, I was very lucky because I was exposed a lot to the industry that I then went
Yeah.
into.
Into.
My first business was in the
Yeah.
same industry. If you're starting a business and you don't have that background, so you haven't already learnt it really on somebody else's time, on somebody else's clock, then you do need to surround yourself with people who have done what you consider to be what great looks like.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's really critical. And even if you go, oh, well, nobody's done this, it's a unique idea, blah, blah, there's always somebody that's done something that's really similar to it that you
Yeah.
can learn from. And I think it's having those people in your life, because there are the holes that you fall into across business and across businesses are so similar that you just need somebody to go, whoa, wait, that's a really big hole. Just walk around it. So it's absolutely critical for success actually to have good people around you and to know when to pick up the phone and know who to ask. But also, it's really bloody lonely being an entrepreneur, really, really lonely. And I think it's really important that you feel as though you've got support around you, because, you fall into that hole, you're on your own. Nobody pulls you out of it. And, it's one of the things that I just don't think people talk about enough, being an entrepreneur. It is really hard and it can be very, very lonely. And so you've got to make sure that you have the right people around you to help you when it's tough.
Yeah. And I guess on that journey, was there a point in which you ever felt scared that you wouldn't make it, or do you have any association to kind of the fear of failure, or was it not there because you had people around you that?
Yeah, so I think it also depends on how you define failure, which is really important, actually. So I'm actually not a huge risk taker, despite how it might look from the outside. I always, every time I make any decision, I always go, okay, what's my absolute downside here? Or
Yeah.
just like I will say, what does great look like? On the other side, I'm like, what is my worst case scenario here? And if I can't handle my worst case scenario, I won't do it. Like, it's not
Yeah.
a risk worth taking. I won't bet the house. I won't bet my health. I won't bet the kids. Like, I won't.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
These are risks that I'm not prepared to take. Doesn't mean I don't take substantial risks, quite big financial risks, quite big reputational risks. But ultimately, I'm like, I will survive that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is a risk I am prepared to take. I will survive it. So I've completely forgotten what the question was now.
It was around kind of your fear of failure, whether it's
Oh yeah,
something, whether you
here we
easily get
go.
scared or
Yeah.
put you upset to risk.
So, um, scared. That's a really good word, isn't it? Do I get scared? I am constantly thinking 6, 12 plus months ahead, constantly. And it doesn't mean, it's not so much scared. I always, I think I've probably said this before, but, I think every business leader is probably about 2 decisions of bankruptcy within the business. And I think, when you realize that, you absolutely, and, every day it doesn't cloud your decisions, and it should never cloud your decisions, but you've always got that on your shoulder. Like, anybody that is running a business is thinking, you're always closer than you think. Despite what it might look to the outside world, some of these, I'm talking about huge businesses.
Yeah.
You think, oh, it must be great for them. They've got
Yeah.
300 million turnover, but they're probably also only 2 decisions away from bankruptcy, 2 bad decisions.
Yeah. And I've heard you say that earlier on in the year when we met, and it's something that I've kind of pondered on. And I think it's interesting because you can frame it different ways, can't you? You can kind of go, it's 2 decisions away, that's really close, or you can go, but there's a decision there between those 2. So as long as you don't get to the second one, as long as that first one, you know,
Yeah,
but,
and also
because
it means from bankruptcy, you're 2 decisions
yeah,
away from success, right? So, like,
yeah,
it works the other
yeah,
way
yeah,
round.
yeah,
There's not that much in it, actually. Um, and I definitely, I think, one of the things that I've seen, when I've seen so many businesses, and we see a lot of businesses that fail. Actually, I
yeah,
guess a lot more businesses that come across my desk that come into administration,
yeah,
and so often it is not the P&L. It's the balance sheet. It is how they are structured. It is their equity base, their shareholder base, their debt structure. It is actually not the number of customers that are buying this
yeah,
week. Um, it is so rarely that. It's much more often it is the balance sheet. And that, when you start a business and you
yeah,
make those fundamental decisions on your shareholder structure and how you configure your shareholder base and who you give power to,
yes,
who you give negative control to, which is really critical. 25% is the most important
Yeah.
number in your shareholder base. And Michael and I have always been very, very, very focused on this side of it. And again, it's something that I learned from the public markets. When you have a floating
Yeah.
business, it's that is usually, there are still some that don't operate in the same way, but usually one of the reasons why you often have a public business is because you don't have these really large negative controlling shareholders. But those decisions, like right when you start the business, that is two decisions away from just getting that so wrong that will
Yes.
without a doubt come back to bite you. And
Yeah.
again, as you go further down the line, there will be moments when you desperately need cash, right? And you're really, really struggling, and somebody offers you something, you think, you know what, I just need to take it. I just need to take it because otherwise I'm not, the business can't go forward. And again, yes, on the one hand, you've saved the business from the cash flow crisis, but in so doing, you have broken all of your shareholder base rules. So again, you're so quick to make a decision that is so business critical. So, I think it works both ways. You're two
Yes.
decisions away from like doing something
Yeah.
absolutely incredible, but at the same time, you're probably two decisions away from bankruptcy as well. So just be mindful.
Yeah. And on the success bit, obviously you're successful with your businesses, but then you also chose to go on TV and kind of you have a public brand as well. And it
Mm,
got me thinking at breakfast this morning. I was sat having breakfast with Darcy, my daughter, who's 10, and she was asking what I was doing today. So I said I'd be speaking with you, and she said, "Oh, can you ask her what it's like to be famous?" So I was like, of course I will. But it got me thinking about fear of success as well, because one of the things that, we talk about with the kids is what they want to do. And with them and with other people, some of this, there's the hesitation of, I don't know if I want to be famous though, or I don't know if I want to own the business. I might just work in it. And there's almost the
mm,
hesitation of the unknown, or could I really do that? That sometimes holds people back who are, people who are incredibly capable. So was that a
sure.
conscious decision? Is it something?
Yeah, so actually it was very interesting when we bought the i360 in Brighton, which is like the London Eye, but in Brighton, basically it's like one pod that goes up and down a big tower. And we bought that earlier this year. So for me, that was a really big decision on a personal level, not on a business level. Business, it made sense.
Yeah.
And it was fun, actually. It is fun. Well, ask me after 6 months of winter whether or not it's still fun or not. But so far, it's been fun. But I live completely anonymously in Brighton, and Brighton's actually a much smaller city than everybody thinks it is. Everybody knows everybody. And you buy the biggest piece on the Monopoly board, and everybody knows who you are.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why actually it was everybody's been very, very, most people have been very supportive of us is because it was a local person buying it.
Yeah.
So, I think it was quite critical that it was a local person that bought it. And I did think somebody else would buy it, but they didn't. And here I am. But it was definitely a big part of the decision because I didn't want to lose my anonymity in the place that I live in. And, same for the kids at school. I've got 4 kids at school here, and would suddenly it be like, oh my God, your mum's just bought the i360, and that becomes a thing. And, oh, can you
Yeah.
tell your mum that my coffee was cold this morning? And like, what? And that's the challenge. And, I've been through it with the guy who owns another business on the seafront in Brighton that I'm chair of. And, it's a lot. So, somebody got bad service. It became about him personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it's just like, oh my God, it definitely adds another pressure. And when I did Dragon's Den, I made a very, very conscious decision. There's an absolute fork in the road where you make the decision, do I want to pursue this? It doesn't mean I would have succeeded,
Yeah.
but do I want to pursue a life in the public eye, or do I not? And at the time of me doing Dragon's Den, I had 4 young children. And we had a plan that we'd always wanted to. I never took a gap year, and I'm a natural wanderer, I guess. I'd probably have no fixed abode if it was down to me. But I would always wanted to go traveling. And there is a window with kids,
Yeah.
that you kind of want your youngest to be able to ride a bike, climb a mountain, and not drown. and your oldest not to be too old that he or she is upset about leaving their friends. So,
Yes.
we had 4 kids in 4 years, very close together. So we had an absolute window. And when you do anything on TV, you really need to do 2 series, because the first series, you're like, what the hell is going on? And especially in Dragon's Den, everybody walks in and goes, Peter and Deborah, please, because me, Nick and Tuka were new that year.
Yeah.
But in the second series, the second time you film, it kind of almost looks like the third series to you, because it's like we do two big. We film one block, but it comes out in two big blocks. So it looks like 4 really out of those 2. And by the second series, we all just sat comfortably in our chair. We got the businesses that we should have got. We competed fairly. It was fun, really, really, really fun, actually. But we had made a commitment as a family to go traveling around the world. And we were supposed to go the year that should have been my second series of Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
But when I was asked to do it, I said to Michael, I have to do 2 series. Like, I'm not just going to go in and do one. I have to do 2. And then we leave. And that's what we did. I finished filming the second series and we had left the country within 10 days. And we ended up going for 3 years, actually, without a shadow of a doubt, the best thing I've ever done in my life, ever, bar nothing. It was amazing. And so I made a real conscious decision. We were absolutely blown away by how much story, how big the story was that we had left the country and done this. And it was talked about such a lot. And then, of course, you get all of the usual kind of celebrity, in inverted commas, invites to be on this show, that show, the other show, do this, do that. And I was like, it's not for me. It's, and I've got very, very good friends that, make a living out of it and love it.
Yeah.
It's just not for me. I love to pootle about. I like to pootle. And you can't pootle if you're famous. It's really hard. You can't just meander down a street and just go and sit in a cafe and do something. You can't suddenly randomly shout at your kids. You can't dance on a table. It's just harder work. That's just not for me personally. It doesn't mean it's not great for lots of other people, but for me personally, it wasn't my calling. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love TV. Absolutely love filming. I love doing it. And, I would love to do more, actually. And I haven't said that for many years, but I would. The stuff I would love to do. But there is a tipping point, and I just don't want to be really famous at all. Not that I think I would, you'd have to be really successful to be really famous. I'm not saying I would be, but you've still got to be conscious of it, right? When you go into something.
Yeah. So what is it? What's next for you? What's your, are there things that new markers in the sand that you're, wanting to achieve, or is it more of a movable feast at the moment?
So, Michael and I started Nightcap 4 and a bit years ago during COVID. And once Nightcap is, what we want it to be, my next thing I will go back again to not running anything.
Yeah.
And so, the only people again that are reliant on me getting out of bed in the morning are my kids, basically.
Yeah.
And that will definitely be my next period of life. I'll always invest. I'll always have my little chair rolls. I love them. But my next period, my next block, we say that like this bit was Michael's block. The block when we were traveling was definitely my block. And it's my turn again. And the next block will be, it's always a bit more chilled than Michael's, to be honest.
So final 2 questions from me. Firstly, if you could go back and do things again, are there things that you would do differently, or is there advice that you would give to your younger self?
Good question. Yeah. I would probably do similar types of things. Like, I'm naturally consumer facing.
Yeah.
I just would have done it much bigger,
Okay.
actually. The one thing I've learnt over the years is that it is no harder to be bigger at all, actually. And all the problems are still the same.
Yeah.
They're still the same. But the reward is bigger, of course, and you access a different world when you're much bigger. And
Yeah.
I would have done things, just would have done it bigger, much bigger.
And then finally, advice to other people who want to develop a high-performing, sustainably successful life.
Oh, God. I mean, high performing, sustainably successful life. That's a really tough one to answer because high performing, really successful life it has implications that I don't know if I would define as success. So I'm not going to answer that specific question if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
More like, how do you have a successful life? And that is, I do think that experience that I had with the left eye and the right eye was really
Yeah.
critical because it is about defining
Yeah.
the things that work for you. It's understanding how you're wired. It's understanding what great looks like to you and not losing sight of that. It doesn't mean you can't be fluid and you can't mold, but it's not losing sight of that. And I think that's really, really important. But I think if you know who you are
Yeah.
and the things that are natural to you, that are non-compromisable, and keeping those in your core, I think you will, on balance, and it is on balance because life is like a heartbeat, right? It goes up, down, up,
Yeah.
down, up, down, up, down. It's not a flat line. I think on balance, the trend line will be up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to The Balancing Act for mastering work, wealth and well-being. You can head over to the website for further insight, links and resources related to this episode at www.balancing-act.co.uk, and remember to subscribe to catch all the new episodes as they're released.